Section 25 of Crime, Its Causes and Remedies by Cesare Lombroso. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Leon Harvey. Chapter 7. Prevention of Political Crime. Subchapter 173. Many of the economic measures that we have suggested for preventing parliamentary corruption and the excessive poverty and wealth will also be very efficacious for the prevention of the political crime that expresses the discontent of the masses, as ordinary crime expresses that of the individual. Subchapter 174. Racial Affinity. Historical experience, as Lanissen points out to us, shows that when a dominant people is inferior in power and culture, the people ruled always end by freeing themselves completely. Of this, Greece, Holland, and the United States are examples. Good politics, then, will consist in a voluntary abandonment of sovereignty in such cases, but vanity and immediate interests blind the ruling nation, and only rarely is this wise resolution taken. An earlier method is a kind of incomplete detachment, like that of Austria and Hungary and England and her colonies, a device that diminishes dependence, contracts, and dissensions, thus removing one of the greatest causes of rebellions and political crimes, the more so as the people, governing themselves, see the more serious evils and are able to remove them. This device of detachment and autonomy is applicable at times within the nation itself, when there exists a great difference of race, as for example between the north and the south of Italy. Under these conditions, a uniform civil, penal, and political code promotes continual discontent, which manifests itself in insurrections. Among degenerate races showing great differences, as in the case of the castes of India and the fanatical Mohammedan populations, the sole method of political conciliation consists in abandoning any attempt at civil or religious progress and in preserving scrupulously the status quo. This even to the smallest details, such as the respect for the ashes of manuscripts in Tonquin and for pork fat in India. This is the system of which the Romans were, and the English still are, masters. Subchapter 175. Decentralization. The future of society politically lies in decentralization, says Spencer. If a people is treated like a child, it loses all spontaneity and becomes incapable of contending against difficulties. Thus it comes that where the English have recourse to their mutual aid societies, the French clamour against the government. They can no longer have a free government, for when they are free they lose all stability and give themselves up to anarchy. The imperial form of government, which is the best adapted to them, is naturally never liberal. On the other hand, by concentrating great powers in the hands of a few, great opportunity is given for corruption, the more so when parliamentary immunity protects the authors of it. If, however, you will allow the cities to administer their own affairs freely, according to their importance, to elect their own officers, to have charge of the courts of first instance, secondary education, the police, the prisons, the means of communication, you will eliminate a great cause of injustice and abuses, and in consequence will eliminate also the political crimes provoked by these abuses. Subchapter 176. Contest for Political Supremacy. In order that one class's exclusive possession of the political power may not proceed to excesses prejudicial to other classes, it is necessary that the people shall be represented somewhere among the multiplicity of historical constituent elements. Thus the tribunate preserved the Roman Republic for centuries and prevented popular uprisings. Subchapter 177. Universal Suffrage. Universal suffrage seems destined, in the course of time, to bring about the abolition of class distinctions, but turned over to the ignorant and corrupt, it may easily be turned against liberty itself. The aristocracy of knowledge, which Aristotle believed impossible, but which has nevertheless existed for centuries in China, would alone be fitted to counteract the power of money, acting through the bourgeoisie, and the power of numbers in the proletariat. But if we were to admit universal suffrage, like a torrent that cannot be stayed, it must be guided by the rational voices of men of higher worth and clearer sight. Subchapter 178. The Judiciary. The judiciary, for its part, ought to be freed from the subservience to the legislative power, which in Italy paralyzes its forces. It is quite different in America, where a popular election has given the judges a power and independence so great as to allow them, upon complaint of a citizen whose rights are infringed, to pronounce null and void laws which do not conform to the Constitution. Noailles shows how this judicial system, which comes directly from the English common law, protects the rights of the nation and of individuals against the power of Congress as much as it does the privileges of the federal government and individual rights against the power of the several states. Where there is a conflict between a clause of the Constitution and a legislative enactment, the judicial power steps in to see that constitutional liberty should not be threatened by the weakness or the tyranny of legislative bodies. Subchapter 179. Poor Man's Lawyer, Legal Aid Societies. We see how the judiciary can prevent political crimes which are committed in revenge for great injustices. The internal peace of Rome was maintained for centuries by the influence of the tribunate, and that of Venice by the relative impartiality of justice. It is certain, on the other hand, that when tyrannical governments like that of Austria and Italy, and that of ancient Piedmont, survived so long without dissensions, they owed it to the equal justice which, except in matters concerning the king, prevailed there by means of the advocate of the poor, and of the Senate, which had the right of abrogating any ministerial decree that did not conform to the laws. The institution of a popular mediator to protect the poor and the weak should again be established. I have observed that the voice of a single honest tribune, Jordes for example, often proves more powerful against the errors of the government than the entire chamber. Thus the recent banking scandals, without the Bollanges deputies in Paris and Colagiani in Italy, all parties would have united to hush the matter up. Subchapter 180. Ability to change laws. If it is possible for a political form to endure, it is due to the flexibility of its constitution and laws, which must adapt themselves to new conditions. Switzerland is a striking proof of this. In the period between 1870 and 1879, the Swiss made 115 changes in the constitution of the cantons and 3 in their federal constitution, and they were able to maintain their union notwithstanding great diversity of race and custom. Subchapter 181. Conservatism. But no change must be made too abruptly. In order that the institutions of a people may be stable, says Constant, they must keep themselves to the level of the people's ideas. The violent abolition of serfdom in Russia and the ancient estates in France and Germany have become a necessity of justice. The same may be said of the secularization of the property of the Church. When the accumulation of property in mortmain and the pretensions of the clergy to exemption from land taxes had made all economic and political progress impossible. Yet these reforms were not brought about without immediate troubles, because there was a disregard of the law of conservatism which does not permit too rapid an introduction of innovations, even for good. Subchapter 182. Referendum. The referendum, or appeal to the people, is able to show, where it exists, how far there exists a community of ideas between the nation and their representatives. It may be considered as the most powerful instrument for the education of a free people, because it forces them to study the laws submitted to them, and by making them feel their whole responsibility, gives them a consciousness of the part they have in the political life of the country. Subchapter 183. Archaic Education. If we are to protect ourselves from occasional revolutionists, who, however misguided and atavistic they and their measures may be, still do advocate reforms, we must strip ourselves of the unfortunate heritage received from our fathers, the rhetoric of Arcadia. Whoever will study the revolutions of 1789 and 1848, and the character of many matoids, will see that one of the great causes of insurrection is the archaic system of education, which is in complete contrast with our positive needs. We bring up our young people in a hothouse instead of in the strong current of life, and we want them to be robust. In this way we get aesthetics. I am willing to admit that, though some deny it, but we do not get men capable of taking part in the contest of modern life. Subchapter 184. Economic Discontent. The sole remedy against our political criminals who are such from accident, from passion, from imitation, or from poverty, consists in remedying the economic uneasiness in the country, since this is the true basis for anarchy. We have today an economic fanaticism, as we formerly had a political fanaticism. It is imperatively necessary that we should open a vent for this economic fanaticism with economic reforms, see above, as we have opened one for political fanaticism with constitutional and representative government, and for religious fanaticism with freedom of worship. Now we do nothing for all this. We permit taxes, recruiting, and penalties to affect the poor man most severely, and give him no compensation, except bright soap bubbles under the names of national glory, liberty, and equality, which by their contrast with reality make his sufferings all the harder to bear. End of section 25.